Nearly 2 decades after Alabama teen Natalee Holloway vanished in Aruba, her mother learned for sure what she always suspected.
For nearly 2 decades, one question haunted millions of people around the world. What really happened to Natalee Holloway? An 18-year-old high school graduate left for Aruba to celebrate one of the happiest moments of her life. She laughed with friends, stepped out for what should have been an ordinary night, and then she vanished without a trace. No body, no crime scene, no answers. What followed became one of the most infamous missing person investigations in modern history. Massive international searches, endless interrogations, confessions that collapsed, shocking lies, false leads that wasted years, and a mother who refused to stop fighting, no matter how impossible the search became. For 18 years, the truth remained buried. Then, in October 2023, inside a federal courtroom in Birmingham, Alabama, the man at the center of the mystery finally did something almost no one believed would ever happen. He confessed. He revealed what happened that night, how the truth had been hidden for nearly 2 decades, and why the world had been searching for answers that would never come the way anyone expected. But this isn't just the story of a confession. It's the story of a life stolen, a family that never gave up, and the devastating chain of events that followed after the prime suspect walked free for years, events that would ultimately claim another innocent victim. This documentary uncovers the complete timeline, the hidden evidence, the lies, the investigation, and the confession that finally closed one of the world's most haunting mysteries. Stay with us until the very end, because the final revelation changes everything. Before we begin, if you enjoy true crime documentaries that uncover hidden facts, untold stories, and the truth behind history's biggest mysteries, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. We're working toward our next 1,000 subscribers, and your support helps us bring more in-depth investigations like this one. Now let's uncover what really happened to Natalee Holloway. To understand why this case captured the world's attention, you first have to understand the person at its center. Long before Natalee Holloway became the focus of international headlines, she was simply an ambitious young woman with a bright future ahead of her. Natalee was 18 years old and grew up in Mountain Brook, Alabama, an affluent suburb just outside Birmingham, known for its quiet, tree-lined streets and elegant homes. Friends and family remembered her as intelligent, kind, and full of determination. She excelled in school, earned honors throughout her education, and had already secured a place at the University of Alabama. Her dream was to study pre-med and eventually become a doctor. She loved dancing, treasured the time she spent with her mother, Beth, and shared a close bond with the rest of her family. To those who knew her, she represented everything parents hope for. A daughter with endless opportunities, standing at the beginning of a life filled with promise. Graduation, university, a successful career, and the future she had worked so hard to build all seemed within reach. In May 2005, Natalee joined a tradition shared by thousands of American high school seniors each year. Along with more than 120 classmates and several adult chaperones, she traveled to Aruba to celebrate graduating before beginning the next chapter of her life. Aruba, a Dutch Caribbean island just north of Venezuela, was famous for its crystal-clear waters, white sand beaches, and reputation as one of the safest tourist destinations in the region. The group checked into the Holiday Inn on Palm Beach, surrounded by the island's popular beachfront resorts. For several days, everything unfolded exactly as expected. It was a carefree holiday, filled with sunshine, laughter, new memories, and the excitement of enjoying one last adventure before adulthood truly began. Soon, the trip was coming to an end. Everyone was scheduled to fly back home on the morning of 30 May. On their final evening together, the students headed out to celebrate one last time. They spent the night in Oranjestad, Aruba's lively capital, where colorful lights, crowded dance floors, and loud music created the perfect atmosphere for a graduation celebration. Natalee was there alongside her friends, enjoying the evening like everyone else. As the night progressed, she met 3 local young men inside the nightclub. One of them was 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot. Tall, self-assured, and fluent in several languages, he was the son of a man training to become a judge on the island. Many people noticed his confidence and easygoing personality. The other 2 were brothers, Deepak and Satish Kalpoi, aged 21 and 18, who lived and worked in Aruba. Witnesses later recalled seeing Natalee laughing and dancing with the group. Nothing about the interaction appeared unusual, and she seemed completely comfortable in their company. As the nightclub began emptying during the early hours of the morning, Natalee reassured her friends that everything was fine. She told them not to worry, because she planned to return to the hotel with the 3 young men. One of her friends would later remember watching Natalee step into a light-colored car before it disappeared into the darkness. That was the last confirmed moment anyone from her group ever saw her alive. The image of that vehicle driving away in the early morning hours would become one of the defining moments of the investigation. It marked the point where an ordinary graduation trip transformed into one of the most famous missing person cases in modern history. Natalee never returned to the Holiday Inn. No one realized she was missing until sunrise. The morning of 30 May was departure day. Students packed their belongings, prepared to board the bus, and expected to head to the airport for their flight back to Alabama. But when Natalee's friends went to collect her, they found something deeply unsettling. Her room looked untouched. The bed remained perfectly made, exactly as hotel staff had prepared it. Her clothes and personal belongings were still inside the room. Her suitcase had already been packed for the journey home. Even her passport was exactly where it should have been. Everything she had brought to Aruba was still there. Everything except Natalee. At first, nobody assumed the worst. Confusion came before fear. Perhaps she had stayed with friends or accidentally fallen asleep somewhere else after the night's celebrations. Her classmates repeatedly called her mobile phone, but every call went straight to voicemail. They searched throughout the hotel, checking rooms, asking staff, and speaking with anyone who might have seen her. As the minutes slowly turned into hours, uncertainty gave way to growing panic. Eventually, time ran out. The airport bus could not remain at the hotel indefinitely. Faced with an impossible decision, most of the graduating class boarded the flight back to Alabama because there was no practical alternative. A smaller group, including Natalee's closest friends and several chaperones, refused to leave Aruba without answers. They remained behind, determined to find out what had happened. Their next step was to contact the local authorities. None of them could have imagined that this would mark the beginning of an investigation that would span nearly 2 decades and captivate the attention of the entire world. The search quickly expanded beyond the island itself. The U.S. consulate was notified, and then came the heartbreaking phone call every parent fears. Back in Mountain Brook, Alabama, Beth Holloway learned that her daughter had never returned to the hotel and was nowhere to be found. She didn't pause to process the news. She didn't wait for more information. Within hours, Beth was on a flight to Aruba alongside her husband, Jug Twitty, and other family members, determined to find Natalee herself. As soon as she arrived, she made a promise that would define the next 18 years of her life. Aruba, she said, was the last place anyone knew her daughter had been alive. That meant Aruba was where she would search, where she would demand answers, and where she would refuse to give up until the truth was uncovered. Meanwhile, investigators focused on the final confirmed sightings of Natalee. Their attention quickly centered on the 3 young men who had spent time with her at Carlos and Charlie's nightclub during the last hours before she disappeared. The first was Joran van der Sloot. 17 years old at the time, he was known for his confidence and calm personality. Tall, well-spoken, and fluent in several languages, he easily made an impression on people. He was also the son of a man training to become a judge, giving his family a level of influence and legal support that few others possessed. Initially, Joran appeared cooperative. According to his account, he had simply offered a ride to a tourist after a night out. The other 2 men were brothers, Deepak Kalpo, 21, and Satish Kalpo, 18. They worked various jobs on the island, including security and internet cafes. Most importantly, witnesses had seen Natalee leave the nightclub in their light-colored vehicle. From that moment on, the 3 young men became the central focus of the investigation. Detectives carefully listened to their version of events. At first, the story sounded believable. They admitted giving Natalee a lift after the nightclub closed. However, instead of driving directly back to the Holiday Inn, they claimed they first stopped at Aruba's famous California Lighthouse, a scenic landmark overlooking the sea, where couples often gathered late at night. After spending a short time there, they said they drove Natalee back to the Holiday Inn, arriving at around 2 o'clock in the morning. If their account was true, Natalee had reached the resort safely, meaning whatever happened afterward involved someone else. At that stage of the investigation, the explanation wasn't impossible to believe. Tourists frequently stayed out late. Friends often became separated after nights of partying. Investigators considered the possibility that Natalee might have wandered elsewhere, met another person, or simply failed to return to her room immediately. For a brief period, authorities treated the 3 men as witnesses rather than suspects. But that changed almost overnight. The weakness in their story wasn't found in their words. It was found in the evidence. The Holiday Inn wasn't a small guest house where movements could go unnoticed. It was a large resort operating around the clock. Security staff monitored the entrances. Surveillance cameras covered key areas. Electronic key cards recorded every guest entering their room. If Natalee had really returned to the hotel at around 2 in the morning, investigators expected at least one piece of evidence proving it. Instead, they found nothing. Police reviewed the surveillance footage frame by frame. Natalee never appeared on camera. No footage showed her entering the building. No images captured her walking through the lobby or heading toward the lifts. Next, investigators examined the electronic records from her hotel keycard. There were no entries after she left for the nightclub. Her room remained unopened until the following morning, when her friends entered and discovered everything exactly as it had been left. Hotel employees working throughout the night were also interviewed. Reception staff, security guards, anyone who might have remembered seeing an American teenager return. None of them recalled Natalee coming back. The absence of evidence became evidence itself. The 3 men insisted they had dropped her safely at the Holiday Inn. The hotel records showed she never returned. Those two versions of events could not both be true. From that moment forward, the entire investigation changed direction. If Natalee never made it back to the hotel, then the final confirmed people to see her were the three men who drove away with her. Their statement no longer looked like a simple witness account. It became the biggest unanswered question in the case. The investigation intensified rapidly. On June 5, 2005, less than 1 week after Natalee disappeared, Aruban authorities arrested Joran van der Sloot along with Deepak and Satish Kalpoe. As detectives widened their investigation, additional people connected to the case were also detained for questioning. At one point, even Joran's father was taken into custody while investigators attempted to determine what he knew and whether he had played any role after Natalee's disappearance. The arrests stunned both Aruba and the international community. What had begun as a search for a missing tourist had now become a full criminal investigation. By then, the story had spread far beyond the Caribbean. Across the United States, television networks covered the case almost around the clock. Night after night, viewers saw the same smiling graduation photograph of Natalee Holloway, a young woman whose future had seemed limitless only days earlier. Journalists flooded Aruba, broadcasting live from beaches, hotels, police stations, and court buildings. Beth Holloway became one of the most recognizable faces in the coverage. Calm but unwavering, she appeared before cameras again and again, determined to keep her daughter's disappearance in the public eye until someone finally told the truth. The tragedy was no longer just one family's nightmare. It had become an international story followed by millions of people, all hoping that each new update would finally provide the answer everyone was waiting for. But that answer never came. Instead, another obstacle emerged. Despite worldwide attention and multiple arrests, Aruba's legal system followed strict procedures. Under Aruban law, investigators could only hold suspects for a limited period unless they gathered enough evidence to formally charge them. And that legal deadline was approaching far faster than anyone wanted. The search quickly reached beyond Aruba. Local authorities contacted the U.S. consulate, and soon the devastating phone call every parent dreads was made. Back in Mountain Brook, Alabama, Beth Holloway was told that her daughter had never returned to the Holiday Inn and that no one knew where she was. She wasted no time. Within hours, Beth boarded a flight to Aruba with her husband, Jug Twitty, and other family members. It was an island she had never imagined visiting under such heartbreaking circumstances. The moment she arrived, she made a promise that would shape the years ahead. She said that Aruba was the last place anyone knew Natalee had been, and as long as that remained true, it was where she would stay, search, and fight until she found answers. Investigators immediately focused on the final confirmed people who had been seen with Natalee before she disappeared. Their attention quickly centered on the three young men she had met at Carlos and Charlie's nightclub. The first was 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot, a confident and charismatic local student who was the son of a man training to become a judge. His family's reputation and access to experienced legal advice set them apart from most people on the island. At first, Joran appeared calm, polite, and willing to cooperate, insisting that he had simply offered Natalee a ride after the nightclub closed. The other two men were brothers, Deepak Kalpoe, who was 21, and Satish Kalpoe, who was 18. They worked various jobs on the island, including security and internet cafes, and witnesses had seen Natalee leaving the nightclub in their light-colored car. From that moment forward, the three young men became the center of the investigation, and every effort was made to verify their account of the night's events. According to their initial statement, they had picked Natalee up after the club closed but did not drive directly to her hotel. Instead, they claimed they had taken her to the California Lighthouse, a well-known landmark on Aruba's northern coast, where people often gathered to enjoy the ocean view late at night. After spending some time there, they said they drove her back to the Holiday Inn at around 2 a.m. They insisted that Natalee got out near the entrance, walked toward the hotel on her own, and that they never saw her again. If their story was accurate, then whatever happened afterwards had nothing to do with them. During the early stages of the investigation, that explanation seemed possible. Tourists often stayed out until the early hours. Groups became separated, and it was not unusual for someone celebrating to lose track of time or meet other people during the night. For a brief period, investigators treated the three young men as witnesses rather than suspects. However, that changed once detectives compared their statements with the physical evidence collected from the hotel. The Holiday Inn was a large resort equipped with overnight staff, surveillance cameras covering the entrances, and an electronic keycard system that recorded when guests entered their rooms. If Natalee had truly returned to the hotel at around 2 in the morning, investigators expected to find some evidence confirming it. Instead, every piece of available evidence pointed in the opposite direction. Police carefully reviewed the security footage from that night, examining it frame by frame. Nowhere did they find an image of Natalee entering the hotel. There was no sign of her walking through the lobby, no footage showing her approaching the elevators, and no indication that she had returned after leaving for the nightclub. Detectives also checked the electronic records from her room key, which showed no activity after she left earlier that evening. Her hotel room remained unopened until the following morning, when her friends entered and found the bed untouched, exactly as housekeeping had left it. Investigators then interviewed reception staff, security guards, and every employee who had worked the overnight shift, yet not a single person remembered seeing a young woman matching Natalee's description return to the resort. The absence of evidence became one of the strongest pieces of evidence itself. The three men insisted they had safely dropped Natalee at the Holiday Inn, but every available record suggested she had never arrived. Both versions of events could not be true. That contradiction transformed the entire investigation. If Natalee had never returned to the hotel, then the last confirmed people to see her were the three men who drove away with her, and their account no longer appeared to be the statement of innocent witnesses. Instead, it became the largest unanswered question in the case. Before we continue, if you enjoy true crime documentaries, unsolved mysteries, and deep investigative stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Your support helps us create more in-depth documentaries, and we're working toward our next 1,000 subscribers. Now, let's continue uncovering the truth behind one of the world's most haunting missing person cases.